look, there she is.
There we go. Hey, friends. All right.
Hello.
Here we are, girls. Module 1 and Module 2 with building literacy with multilingual learners. All right. So I guess we'll just kick off and just go in order of the questions that we were given. Let that be our layout. Our first one was saying, how can a student's home language be leveraged as a tool for academic development? What strategies can teachers implement to ensure home languages are valued and actively included in the classroom learning? And how can translanguaging practices be intentionally integrated into daily classroom instruction to support both language development and content learning? It was heavy. I had to look at all of those separately.
Me too, me too. Let me tell you something funny before we get into your great questions. I had to look at when I was just reading, I was reading translanguaging as translingual.
Oh gosh.
At one point, I was like, whoa, 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 translingual. No, my brain was all crazy. So
Oh, it's good.
I had to get refocused. I was like, translingualing. This doesn't even make sense. I mean, it was awful. I was really tired that night.
Oh, that's so funny.
All right, so the first one, kind of start that part.
Yeah.
All right. How can a student's home language be leveraged as a tool? I have notes all over the place. I'm gonna be flipping around.
I know. I got a lot of things from the article, the Diane August article, the
Love that
Educating
one.
English Language Learners.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically just as a classroom teacher facilitating, acknowledging and facilitating them to be able to use their home language to support the language that they're learning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you're going to have to utilize probably someone who has a lot of background knowledge in the area. So like schools like ours, where we don't have a lot of students who are English language learners, you would utilize your ESOL teacher for those supports. But it's just basically making them feel like safe and, important still, even though, and like helping your classroom, the other students, like seeing the similarities and the differences between them and their peers, and just giving them the opportunity to share those things, like either just through discussions and classroom conversations or within their writing, and giving them all the resources
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that.
Yeah, I definitely felt like, the film of Moises, I loved that. I thought it was very sweet and very moving, and it really put a lot into perspective for me. So like understanding that poor boy, it should have allowed him to bridge his academic successes because it was very obvious he was very intelligent,
Very smart.
but he was being suppressed.
Mhm.
And I just felt like, we've talked back in some of our other classes, the concept of the culturally responsive teaching, and they were lacking that completely. So they weren't appreciating his own background. And it made me think about, well, if you're using their home language to help use that as a tool for them, using the visual aids, mixed in with the bilingual resources to help them make connections, were very beneficial and would have benefited Moises. Using the vocabulary charts would have been beneficial. Relevant text where he could see himself in the book. And fostering, I know, like you just said, that inclusive environment, showing that you're accepted here, you are safe here. I loved how you said the similarities and differences. I liked how in the article with Diane August, she talks about the partner talk activities. So it's actually allowing your English kids to merge with students of other languages as well, which I thought was cool. And when you do those things, it allows your student who does come from a different background to be less stressed, It makes them feel brave to actually put their, toe in the water, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
I did like in the video, the culturally responsive teaching. I felt also like you did, there wasn't a lot of that going on, but I did think the teacher was trying, when she was looking for tests that were written in Spanish. Remember, she was down there in that dungeon cellar looking thing, and so I thought that she was trying a little bit. I loved that she let him use, he was using the vocabulary, his glossary, at some points in the class, but then when it came time for the test, he was not allowed to use it. And that made me just kind of think we give supports for so many of our learners, no matter if they're, ELL or not. And then we take those supports away when it
Mhm.
comes to the test. And I really hated that he wasn't allowed to use the glossary that he was used to, because he used it and it helped him during the class time, but not for that test that he'd been prepping for. So it's like the supports that were working for him were taken away.
It
And
made me
that,
sad because you're right. She did take that away. And I felt at moments she wanted to be supportive,
Mhm.
but then there were moments she shut him down. Like they're walking in the hall and she's like, but no,
Yes.
it's not a big deal. And he goes, you see, yes, it is
Yeah.
a big deal, you know? And she stopped and she goes, you're right. It is a
Mhm.
big deal.
Mhm.
You know, I thought was really interesting. And it broke me when you saw the other kids who didn't come from the same background, making fun of him and calling him stupid. No, he wasn't stupid. He actually was very intelligent. And the kid who was calling him stupid was cheating off Moises's tests,
Yeah, exactly.
you know? So that I definitely felt like that put a lot into perspective for me that home language should be valued. And, getting
Mhm.
ready for these lessons with these students that we're supposed to be teaching these two lessons to, looking at the group of kids that I might be working with, there's a Russian background,
Right.
Ukrainian background, Spanish background.
And why can't standardized tests be given in multiple languages? Like, what's the problem with that?
I know. And like you said too, like the amount of supports, I mean, like as classroom teachers, that's what we're constantly doing,
Yes.
teaching our students skills and strategies so they can be successful. But then at the end of the day,
They're all
when
tested the same.
they're all tested the same and they're not able to use them. So to me, that's not an accurate picture of what the student knows, because we spend all our time giving them the resources and the tools that they need to be successful. So,
And I'm just wondering, with the population, of ELLs increasing in our country for sure, in our city or in our county as well, I wonder if we'll ever move to that. Like, why not? Why
mhm,
not give him you're still testing the same content, the same standards, right?
yeah.
Just you could make tests that were testing the same standards, just in different. Boy, that's our deal. That's our gig to get out of teaching, girls. We're gonna make standardized tests.
Well, that just goes in the part in the video too, when she's having the interaction with the principal, just the mindset of standardized testing and what it is, because the principal was making it not a big deal either. Like, nope, you're not getting them a test in Spanish. It doesn't matter. Just give them the test, blah, blah, blah.
And
And
he
really,
was
as
Hispanic.
teachers, yes, which
Yes.
I thought was fascinating.
Mhm.
But even as teachers, and like, we do it ourselves too. Like a good classroom teacher is not going to utilize those tests as a measure on what your kids know.
Mm-mm.
Like we're right now in the middle of giving this Amira test.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, it irks me to my core
Mhm.
that this is what we're using to measure a child's reading ability. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, if I did have English language learners in my class trying to take this test,
Mm-mm.
and like you're supposed to do it in a small group setting, but you still have 5 kids on a computer, they're screaming in a microphone to be heard.
Wake up, Spot.
Ah! Like how overwhelming that has to be. I mean, it overwhelms me. And like there's only 5 or 6 of them taking it at a time. I can't even imagine if you don't understand the language to be able to take a test like that and be successful. I'm just like, I don't know. But like, there's so much assessment and there's so many things we have to do. At the end of the day, honestly, we all are just like, oh, we just got to take this test. We just got to take it to take it.
It doesn't
But
matter.
none of us
Exactly.
look at the data or the information that it gives us because we know it's not meaningful.
At all.
Right. When they were talking about strategies that would be beneficial for teachers to implement that home language, I mean, they gave a ton throughout the articles and even in the
Yes.
book. But
Mhm.
I think the one that I felt that I could really support well is that storybook reading in the
Mhm.
students' home language. I think is cool, and definitely, using definitions in their home language, vocabulary in the home languages. Love visuals. I'm a visual person to begin with myself.
Mhm.
Um, I thought those were very beneficial because when you introduce, especially those key concepts by connecting them into their, prior and main language and those experiences, it makes them feel more willing to also participate, you know, um, and just connect and not feel so lost.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I know in the book, was it in the book? I think it was in the book. Went back to Vygotsky.
Yes,
Mhm.
it sure did.
Woo, let's jump back to Robert's class.
Yes, it did.
So I thought that was cool because there was a quote and it said, let's see, an already established system of meanings. Hold on, I got to pull it up. I only typed part of it when I was finding my notes. I have to put all my thoughts together and then I get it together and it's like, it's not together.
Page 19 is where it talks about Vygotsky again.
No, I found it on page 30.
Oh, never mind.
Yep. And already, let's see,
Oh,
that
there. I got you.
some of these meanings can introduce, it's an already established system of meanings that they already have. They're smarter than some people would give them credit for,
Mhm.
which I thought was that, I don't know why that was such a big takeaway for me.
Mhm.
They come to you with some form of background. And I think sometimes it's like our student from last year, like he came to us and we just assumed he knew nothing.
Yeah.
No, he really did. He even liked numbers.
Mhm.
But then we were trying to reteach him numbers. No, you don't start all over again with him. Build on
Mhm.
what he knows. But that's where I don't understand the ESOL program because nothing was given to our teacher friend to
Mhm.
see okay, this is where he is. Here are some vocabulary words and visuals and this, that, and the other to help you feel like you're not lost for his sake and he's not lost either. And I don't know, I find that so fascinating. Granted, we do have a very small population
That's
of
what I was wondering if it was
students,
because of our school makeups,
but
because I
it's
feel the
Well,
same
and
way.
like
that's not
I get
fair.
that, but it is not fair because they're not being served
No.
appropriately. And I know we talked about this last class too, but like it's just more apparent to me the more we're looking at this stuff. It's just not fair to the
Uh,
students or the teachers to get a part-time teacher that
Mhm.
pulls those students for a half hour and like expect some sort of progress to happen.
yeah.
Like there has to be a better way to like immerse in the classroom and like find the supports like, and I know we've talked about this in other aspects too, but like you could cluster some of these students together, even though they're not in the same grade. But like, how cool would it be for like the part-time ESOL teacher to like take the English language students in like grades K through 3 for like
Mhm.
Mhm.
one half of a day, like all together, and just like figure out how to immerse like all of the content standards in there as well.
Mhm.
But like be amongst somebody who's more knowledgeable in that area to be able to
Sure.
support them. And then you could do 3 days with K through 3 students and then 2 days with fourth and fifth graders, and then the next week you would flip-flop. I just feel like because when they're in the classroom they're not successful and they're not getting
Yeah.
what they need to be, and the gen ed teacher honestly is responsible for 20 other students,
Mhm.
if they're lucky, just 20 more students too. And like that one teacher can't sit with
No.
one student all day
For
long.
sure.
And it's just, I don't know. There has to be a better way.
I agree.
I like that model though. I've never thought about doing it that way,
Yeah.
but we
Like,
get more out of it, I
because
feel.
you totally, and like, and it's just teaching and like just speaking and listening skills and going through
Mhm.
vocabulary and teaching them how to like ask questions in the school setting, like teaching them the skills that they can utilize when they go back to their classroom and be able to like survive and start understanding what's happening.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
That's good.
I don't know. I think a lot of our resources can be utilized in a more efficient way, honestly.
But I also feel like we should be given more resources. Like last night, I
Yeah.
started looking at like my own lesson that I'm going to do with these kids that I actually do not know, So I'm looking at like, okay, you need to have visuals in their own language, vocabulary with visuals, and then make those connections, your vocab charts, this, that, and the other. I'm like, wait a minute. one of them, when I contacted the ESOL teacher, she's like, we're not quite sure what language she speaks. Well, then, okay.
Really?
And then where am I pulling from? You know, because the ESOL teacher was like, well, you'll just have to look for sources. But you're right, visuals are great. Like they do.
Really?
So what do they use?
Okay,
Mhm.
so my ESOL teacher has sent me some resources to use that I'll send along. She has access to a couple of different things that she was telling me about. So
Interesting.
I'll send them. She said, "Oh, I have access to blah blah blah." I haven't read through my emails fully, but I was like, "Oh, great, I'll look at that a little bit later." But she
Mhm.
definitely has great resources. And you saw all of her qualifications, like she's been around forever and
Yeah.
ever. She was the ESOL lead in the county or
Yeah.
something from her.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think she has some good resources
That's good.
that
Yeah,
she
if you
uses
could
for
share
sure.
those would be great to.
Yeah, I would be happy to. One thing that I wanted that I just was good to remind myself of is for the ways to support multilingual learners article, Literacy Partners 2024.
Mhm.
Um, it reminded us about mentor text and how they need to see themselves. Remember windows and
Yeah.
doors. Yeah. Or
Mirrors.
what mirrors
Mirrors.
and windows.
Windows and mirrors.
Sorry, doors. I'm like, it's time to go. Um, but it was just good to see that again, that it's to be mindful that MLs need to see themselves in books. And that's another way to
Uh-huh.
create that environment, that warm environment. And 1%, a study in 2018 said that 1% of children's books were American Indian or had American
Yeah.
Indians, and
That was
Mhm.
huge.
5% of, I mean, that's crazy. And I remember 20 years ago when I started teaching, 24, it was like 0%. Like I don't ever remember that different. I mean, we tried, but that was never something that was on the forefront of our minds. So
Mhm.
I like that refresher in that article for me to make sure I'm pulling those resources for these students. And then I love they talked about the structure of a writing workshop is good for ML students. And I
Mhm.
do believe that like even in my classroom with my EIP students, having a structure, they know what's coming next. They know what
Yes.
to expect. It's the same. I always say, like by Christmas, my kids could run this class. Like they
Yeah.
know exactly what's coming next. They know, and it just says it relieves some fear and anxiety when students are learning a new language. And so just make sure that's the setting and routine will help them focus on learning and not worried about what's coming next. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
I highlighted that information too for question one.
And it
But I
Mhm.
was
thought it
interesting
was
when
good.
you said about the mentor text, because it said in that same, the literacy partners, the ways to support. It said,
Yes.
Mhm.
when was the first time you saw yourself reflected in a character or a book? And it really took me a minute. Like, they'll think back to me, and it's easier for
Yes.
us to connect.
But even
Mhm.
as little girls, though, like
Yeah,
there
Mhm.
were lots of boys, I feel like,
which is true.
but
Mhm.
definitely more white American for sure.
Yes,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of Anna Green Gables.
Yeah.
Hot Mess Express wants to
Mhm.
be a part of things, but gets everyone riled up in the wrong way.
I was
She's
thinking like
good.
Amelia Bedelia
Oh,
and
yeah.
Pippi Longstocking, like were kind
I think
of
I'll stop it. Yep.
the ones that I can first think of, I
But
guess.
then I thought, because so many of the things we were looking at talk so much about mentor texts, um, it just really put into perspective how I really need to slow down just with
Mhm.
my own students. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I can type in, find me books about, how to be helpful to others without being asked, right? But am I really taking the time to find a mentor text in the language that a student knows best? Am I choosing something that shows the window of a
Mhm.
student in my classroom? Am I celebrating the other cultures that are within my classroom? Am I including characters that serve as proud mirrors of that own student? Include books where the author chooses to trans language. Like, I don't do those
Mhm.
things.
Mm-mm.
So, like, really slowing down. All right, look at this book, read the book. Does it fit these? Check, check, check.
That would be nice to turn over to our media specialist or the Learning Commons. Like that's something that they could, you know, steer
Help
that
me.
maybe
Yeah.
for our whole schools, like just get them on that.
I mean,
Um,
honestly, I feel in general, my kids were so horrible today. But if I just read a book, they were amazing.
hmm.
Yeah.
We can read a book every single day. And if they're out of control, come here, we're reading a book. And there's so much teaching that really can be done through literature
Yes.
that, I mean, I have three friends that are Indian. And like today we did hot chocolate. Well, their parents
Yes.
sent in special marshmallows because they have to be vegan marshmallows. Like, who knew that? I wouldn't have known.
Mm-mm.
Um, I haven't read one book this year. Now, when we did holidays around the world, I did make sure to talk about holidays that they celebrate, show where they're from on a map, and they light up like a light bulb. It's the coolest thing, you know. So I feel like you're right. We should contact our media specialist. Can you find books about,
I think
yada,
that's
yada,
something
yada.
they would be able to access
Hmm.
pretty quick
Think,
and take something off of your plate, like you've got enough to think about. And that's their wheelhouse, um, for
okay.
sure.
Oh, here's a good one. So I was thinking last night, should have already had it to show you guys. This book is Federico and the Wolf,
Oh
and it's
yeah.
really the Red Riding Hood, but it also incorporates, like speaking Spanish. So there's words that will look at the very back, has a little glossary. So you can look up what these words mean, because then it will help you understand the other parts of the story, even though it's told in English, they throw in those words in there.
Oh, I
And
love
it's
that.
interesting because when I've read it with my students before, I'll stop and be like, oh my gosh, what is that? They're like, oh, that's a pepper. Well, how'd you know that word meant pepper? And then when they were done, they're like, oh my gosh, I speak Spanish,
Mm.
me too.
Oh,
And they
that's
thought that
fun.
was so cool. But I love to do those adaptive fairy tales.
Well, and I think something like you just said reminded me, I have been out of the classroom, for 5 years, but I love sitting on the carpet and holding a book and reading it to students. And so much of what I see now when I'm in classrooms is they just play the book and someone reads it to them on the screen on the smartboard. And I feel like you lose so many teaching moments when it's nice to just be able to throw it up there and you can kind of check out a minute as a teacher. But my goodness, like you were saying, oh, stop. Well, I wonder what that word means. The intentional stops along the way to elaborate and create language. I'm not a fan of just playing. I do it. I mean, I've done it this year, obviously.
Same here.
But man, I do love that sit down, talk through the
Oh
story.
yeah, I love to read a book. And one of our kindergarten teachers too, like made a point because I'm always like we run all our lessons off of PowerPoint, so like my board
Yeah.
is constantly on and like it just keeps us moving or whatever. But she made a comment. She said, because my board's always on, even if I'm reading a book and like distractions can happen. She's like, turn your board off just so it's a black screen, even though you're not even using it while you're reading a book,
Mhm.
and just see the difference. And I was like,
That's huge.
floored about the difference between when I'm reading a book, even if my screen's on and I'm not utilizing it, versus when I just turn it off so it's a black screen, so it's not even a distraction that they can, like, their eyes focusing on it, and just like the change and how they are
Really,
absorbed. It's crazy.
I'll have to try that.
Yeah, and it has happened every time I've done it ever since she told me to do that. Every
Because you're
time I
right.
read a
Even
book.
with even if I'm paused in my PowerPoint, I still leave it up,
Yep.
turn
That's
it off.
usually what I've done.
Sure,
But like
sure.
now, ever since she said that to me, I turn off my screen so it's a
Yeah,
black screen and they're only focused on me and it's fascinating.
Mhm.
I have
You
to
should
check it
try
out.
it. Yeah.
Wow,
You
I
should.
will. I will definitely try it.
Yeah.
I will definitely try it.
So I guess we could go into the translanguaging practices that are intentional and integrated into a daily classroom. What helps to support both the language development and the content learning? Taking all the things that we've talked about, strategies that we can implement to help them feel safe, to also help them to feel like, okay, it's okay for me to give it a go, and participate. I would say I loved the collaborative activities like the partner talks. They talk about that in the Diane
Yes.
August article.
Hmm.
I loved that. And then, doing those collaborative talks where students can discuss in their home language and then transition into English. And
Hmm.
then I'm all about, parent key vocabulary and those visuals. They talked a lot about the academic vocabulary. It really has to be explicitly taught, but
Hmm.
also putting those visuals along with it. Um, and then my other favorite thing they talked a lot about was the structured speaking and listening activities, which
Hmm.
I'm sorry, that's not just beneficial for ESOL students. I think that's
No.
beneficial for all students because
Hmm.
it helps keep them engaged and it gives them a guide. Like you
Yeah.
said earlier, with the writing, doing the structured writing,
Hmm.
that it's so important. It feels inclusive and it feels like I know what's coming next. Yeah, I think all of that is fantastic.
Hmm.
Yeah, the structured writing. It said fear and anxiety for a student
Yep.
is just wiped away.
Increases. Yep. I was trying to see why I highlight this. Hold on a second.
Yeah, a lot of my notes came from that Literacy Partners website, just
Yeah.
like things that we've already talked about, like the read alouds, the mentor text, the visuals and gestures, vocabulary, consistently using language when you're talking about vocabulary.
I liked the language prompts because I felt like we started doing that a lot to allow writing to be immersed with our reading lessons. They already have the prompt, they're just filling it in, and then they go back and they're rereading exactly
Yeah.
what it says. And my kids who hate writing are enjoying this.
My kids are loving
It's
it.
been
Like
awesome.
did you do the snowman today?
No, we didn't get to that. I told
It's,
you we had a very rough day.
that one was cute. Like they just have a
Hmm.
blast being able to just like write and relating it to a story.
Mhm.
I had
It's so
lots of fun.
good. I'm trying to remember where I found.
I think
I
we
was
already.
thinking to myself back to that Richard Levine, the immersion video with Moises. I just loved him so much. I think it really put into the concept of like, as a teacher, do I ever put myself in my own students' shoes?
Mhm.
Like, do I really think about their background, whether they're ESOL or not? Like,
Right.
where are they coming from? What environment are they experiencing at home? So when I'm starting to get frustrated, it's like, whoa, slow down, hold up the brakes. They're dealing with X, Y, and Z. I need to look at it this way. And it just really showed that in general, there's no one size fits all,
Mm-mm.
teaching, period.
Mhm.
You got to read the room, you know? It's like when you're teaching a lesson and you realize like no one's getting it.
Mhm.
Good
You pivot.
teacher can pull it out and
Mhm.
completely
Yep.
change the activity. So finally you start seeing those light bulb moments, you know?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. I
That's
think it goes along with question one. In the effective literacy practice for ELs, this was the video with Claude
Mhm.
Mhm.
Goldberg. I
Okay.
kind of like what you were saying earlier, Megan, about you feel like these students come to you with zero knowledge, and so you start there, but that's not good. I love in the very beginning of his presentation, he showed the brain and how all the
Mhm.
orthographic mapping works. And
Mhm.
he was saying that learning to read in the language that you are learning to read in a language you are learning is basically the same as learning to read the language that you already know. They involve similar ways that the brain is networking to make those connections in the brain. So it's like they've already made those connections with that first language, and the
Exactly.
same things have to happen for the second language. They
Mhm.
don't come with zero knowledge. I
Mhm.
wanted to highlight that with what you'd said earlier.
Which goes back to that Vygotsky.
Yeah,
Mhm.
They already have,
yes,
something already in place for them. So don't think they're coming to you with absolutely nothing,
no,
Mhm.
you know?
and it's so easy to do.
Yeah.
It's easy to do. They just need additional support, because they have it there. You just have to you gotta help them
But you know
access.
what was interesting about the Claude, the Reading League chapter? He does, that was a long video, but I was trying to think about, okay, well, what components do I feel I can use in my own classroom with my own kids, even though I don't have ELLs,
Mhm.
versus if I did have ELLs. And it's goes back to stuff we've already talked about before in other classes, like that explicit instruction of phonemic awareness and phonics.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everyone's going to benefit from that.
Mhm.
Your vocabulary development, everyone's going to benefit from that, providing the definitions, providing visuals, acting out,
Mhm.
but also putting it in the speaking, but also putting it in the writing, which is what we've
Mhm.
just started doing over the last couple of weeks. So we've noticed a huge difference. Um, and then what was the other one that
He
I,
mentioned, read alouds and how important that is because you model, you for fluency because he got into fluency too and how important it was.
Yeah,
Um,
those are all things that I have too.
yep.
These are my notes for question number 2, came from the
Oh,
Goldenberg.
oh gosh, yeah, we're sorry.
Just the important, but I was just saying I think they're all like kind of
it's
relating
all linked
together.
together. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
question number 1 and 2. So like I had used Goldenberg's to like but it's the same thing Megan says, just the importance of explicit targeted instruction. All the things that we do that are beneficial for all our kids. The only thing that's different is just making sure that you are, promoting home language versus English language, and then like utilizing their background knowledge to help, like collaborating together.
Exactly. And having more of those talk moments,
Yeah.
allowing them to peer talk, turn and talk to a partner. Now share your
Mhm.
thoughts with us.
Mm-hmm.
Because they talk a lot about comprehension strategies. Comprehension is crucial for life in general. I mean, just talking and hanging out with somebody.
Yeah,
Are
period.
you understanding what's happening versus listening to a story being read, you reading a story, someone giving you directions, and can you follow, the steps to make it happen?
Well,
But, understanding you have to model it, but also practice it.
Well, and think about this. If the math teacher in the Moises video would have stopped, let's read the question, the story problem, word problem that she had on the board. Turn and talk to your neighbor about what's going on. He turned and talked. He tried to, but of course he didn't want to be disrespectful to the teacher. But if she would have allowed him to turn and talk to that little girl, she could have cleared up so much, confusion
Yes.
for him, and she was speaking his language, and
Yeah.
that would have helped him a lot to even for that teacher to use that strategy.
And it was that little girl, I thought she was so sweet.
Yeah,
She was like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah,
exactly.
But I felt that in the film, it really showed that, especially when you have immigrant children who want to learn and have a desire to learn and have, natural gifts, I think they feel very torn trying to fit into a new place. Because I loved the big brother. I felt like he didn't have a big enough role, but his role was
Yeah.
big. It was small,
Yeah.
but big. Because he was like, but you're doing great. Keep trying. And then there was that other little boy who's like, let's just skip.
Yes, right.
Like, it's all right. I'm dumb. And Moises is like, but I'm not. And I'm excited. I want to learn. And so to know or to think how many kids suppress at some point and just give up.
Yeah, of
That
course.
is sad. So yeah, I feel like we did great on that first section of questions. So let's rock and roll. Let's move on.
Let's go for it.
So let's go to what instructional supports. I mean, I feel like it's the same stuff.
I know
What
that's what, like I
instructional
said,
supports-
these were
Yeah.
all my notes that I had for question number 2 when we were.
Or here, how can these supports be adapted to meet the needs of the varying levels of English proficiency? I think I'd say my two biggest takeaways of that was like the explicit vocabulary instruction and then scaffolding of instruction, like really breaking things down into those manageable steps, doing that gradual teaching to see if they can gain it and then keep building onto it so they feel successful in learning. And then I think that explicit vocabulary instruction has to be taught, especially when you're looking at, those science and social studies. That academic vocabulary is so hard. But then what's that one word? The cognates.
Oh,
When we were
yes.
talking about cognates, I felt like, I came up with a new word for cognates because that just seems like such a big word for me.
Like my translinguation or whatever I say.
Yeah, right. But there are some things that connect. Our vocabulary can connect with theirs, but then in some languages, like one word we have for multiple things, they have like 10 words to mean all 10 of those different things. So trying to help a student, I think doing that explicit vocabulary instruction, whether it's definitions within context, the visual aids, which I love, and then that constant repeated practice and then putting speaking into it,
Yes.
I think is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
And you can develop that and make that, with differentiated instruction.
I think that another way you can, some other strategies you can use that will vary the needs of the different levels the English proficiency. Shared writing, that was in one of the articles, the ways to support multilingual learners. It's been a long time since I've done shared writing, but that has always helped a lot of my students. And they're just having to think of their sentence that goes along with the story, not the entire passage that we're writing.
Mhm.
And then also supportive partnerships, if you're intentional about your partnerships. I used triad groups one time. That was great because if you have sometimes two, just having partner groups is tough because one person quits talking, the other one is like, eh. But three, three allows that third person to kind of jump in when they feel ready. And then have like long-term partnerships. Like if I was that teacher with Moises, that girl would have been his long-term partner. If he felt
Mhm.
comfortable with her, and stuff like those are good scaffolds you could use maybe as some shared writing and some supportive partner groups
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
starters.
Which really is just it's structured language development.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All of that, giving them the
Mhm.
frequent opportunities to stop, let's speak, let's listen, let's turn and talk, hang out with your partner, try and conquer this. Doing presentations together. So
Yes.
yeah, that's another good takeaway.
All that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's all I got.
I think what was
Yeah, provide opportunities for language practice.
mm,
What's anything else for Q2?
it's worth working on engaging. Oh, I thought this was a huge who's still there it goes. That same Diane, she did good, Diane August. Another thing, just like random thought. It was talking about telling, and it was saying telling is defined as the teacher providing students with information rather than engaging them in the creation of information through coaching, recitations, or other forms of interaction. Had a statistically significant positive effect on ELL's reading comprehension, but a negative effect on the comprehension of English proficient students. I thought that was huge. Because like I think about all the time, like I'll stop and be like, well, what do you think's happening? And why do you think this is happening? No, they need telling. Just
Mhm.
be direct. They're
Mhm.
doing this because of X, Y, and Z. And I thought that was extremely interesting. In the case of telling, the research suggests that ELLs they benefit greatly because they were provided with more support for engaging with core content in English, a level of support that was not necessary for English proficient students,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
does show there is a difference, you know. So I did.
And with the Common Core standards and everything being pushed to so higher level questioning, you remember when
Yeah,
we changed the Common
not
Core?
going to help them.
No, the paragraph right above that, I underlined that as well. That says higher, only having higher level questioning and discussions about the meaning of the text
I wrote
had a
not
strong
helpful.
relationship to improve reading comprehension for English proficient students, but had little benefit for ELL. So,
Yeah.
when Common
Huh,
Core came
interesting.
around, it's like we got rid of all the little questioning, like skinny questions, and that's what,
Mhm.
and then the fat questions is what we went to, and that has a negative effect on the ELLs.
Mhm.
Um, and the standards push you to only include or do the majority of higher level questioning. You have to really be conscious of that as a teacher if you have EL students.
For sure.
Mhm.
To
That's
me, that's funny. I highlighted that as well.
I know. I literally wrote
So
not
many things that
helpful.
you have to think about as a teacher. So many things.
I know. Definitely. It's a lot to be in this profession.
Yeah, because the
Um,
standards say this, but you got to scaffold it and break it down for them for sure.
I know. It's like I could literally not be a parent or have another life,
Oh, definitely.
as a teacher. And I just don't think that there are any other careers. That's why I get so frustrated because I do love my job and I'm fortunate that I do have a wonderful team, but I've never experienced our morale has changed greatly. And it's like all we do is assess, assess, assess. So then I think about ESOL kids. Okay, fine. Let's think about them. How much assessing are we doing to them too? Because wouldn't that be harming them even more than it's harming our own students here?
You would think.
Because it's
Mhm.
harming us. It is
Mhm.
harming us. I feel like that's all we do. Like Kristen made a comment today at our CCC, like, do we even have time to pull our small groups anymore? Like all we do is assess, assess, assess.
Mhm.
We want to teach. That's why we went into this profession.
Mhm.
We're darn good at what we do. So I don't know, just
We feel that at our
on
school
my
too.
soapbox.
Do you think schools that have a high ELL population do as much assessment as we do? I mean, I
I
know some are
feel that
county
they
mandated, like the
I feel that they
Beacon.
teach. I feel that they teach because I have a friend who's in the outskirts of Birmingham, and they all just love their job, but because they're Title I, they have just been given a plethora of resources,
Yeah, I do agree with
and they grow and they grow and they grow, and these kids come. Many of she does have quite a bit of ELLs, but a ton of theirs are mining families.
that.
Okay.
Mhm.
They move a lot, and they want their kids to be successful, but they have no time to help them because they work in the mines all day. They come home in time for the kid to go to bed, and they repeat. It's just like there's not a whole lot of the parent support to help them at home, but their kids are actually thriving in school, you
Mhm.
know? But they do. It's like, but then we work in we are a very well-off community.
Sure.
Now, granted, there are some that are not, in our community, but we have the ability to do so. So I don't understand, where is our disconnect?
I don't either. But we
I mean,
assess. We
Shameful.
assess more like the county expects us to assess X, Y, and Z. And
Mhm.
then we, as the school, we have like 5 other assessments we're doing on top of what the county
Yeah.
wants us to do.
It's constant.
Line. Yeah.
And then, I mean, I don't remember exactly how much we raised for our fun run was like $49,000.
Same.
Like we fundraise all the time and we make great money. And then it's like, well, where is it going?
Mhm.
You know, I don't know. It's definitely getting very,
Do you know where ours went to? I don't know the exact amount, but I have an idea. Um, we raised 40, 50, $60,000 as well. Our money is going to pay for a police officer at the front of our school to direct traffic because the car rider line is long.
put
wow.
your kid on the bus.
That's how I feel. Put them on the bus.
Public
Yeah.
school provides you with free transportation.
Nope.
And
How
honestly,
much is a police officer's salary? Because we pay him now. I need to stop and ask him one day. Just be like, hey, sir. I mean, what would y'all guess? 15 to 20,000 for the year? 13?
Yeah, I don't know.
10? A lot more that should be going to professional development for us.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Nope. So we're playing a police officer. And then last year it went to a fence around the playground. We paid for a fence. And then the year before that, it was an outdoor symposium thing, like little, yeah. So for the past 3 years, it's
And
been,
I agree. You need beautification every now and then, but it's like our kids are in dire need just across the board, whether they're
yep.
ELOs or they're,
You look at our scores, we've fallen. But
but
anyway,
really, honestly, do you know what our kids need the most is the ability of their honestly highly trained teacher. I mean, teachers that are coming out of the programs and that have been around for 20 plus years, like, believe it or not, we do know what we're doing and we love doing what we're supposed to do. Give us the time and the ability to be able to do what's best for our classrooms when
mhm,
needed. And I think that
exactly.
is really the biggest problem with morale. And because we have a to-do list that is not even things that we feel are important, that is just never ending, that gets added to each day. And like you can never catch up. Like you can never catch up. All I want to do is come here and teach, like do what I love to do, but you can't.
No.
no.
And I think honestly, that's what the problem is. I think we have too many people that are higher up that are telling us what our job should look like and haven't been in the classroom in who knows how many years. And
And these children are different. Even if
yeah,
you were in the
they're
classroom
different.
15, 20 years ago, or
Exactly.
these children are
And
different.
they're not getting, and like, I mean, the children that we receive in our classrooms on like that will continue to come to us are honestly struggling with attention, and that is coming from technology, and we're
Sure.
basing all sorts of things on technology at this point in time, and like attention problems are going to come and they're getting worse and worse. And hey girls, come in quietly. um it's just like I think we're dealing with a whole different group of children that's not going to get any better.
Exactly.
Which takes us right into our listening comprehension
It
question
does beautifully.
because we are struggling in listening comprehension.
Yeah.
Not
Um,
us, the children. The
Yeah.
children. Yeah.
Yes, immensely, which
Mhm.
is so sad because they talk about in the speaking and listening and content area learning by Douglas Fisher and Nancy Frey, they were saying that, listening comprehension typically exceeds reading comprehension from early childhood through at least middle school. So it shows that kids can actually understand more complex ideas, but we're not talking to them. I'm getting so many students. It's like, does your mom talk to you?
No,
I
I
know.
hate to say that, but they don't. They're not interacting with them, having conversations with them.
reading books, sitting
Yeah.
down and reading books. Yeah, nothing.
But to enhance students' listening skills, it says you have to facilitate it. You have to expose them. You have to talk to them so that they can transfer their knowledge to their reading and writing practices.
Mhm.
So then it was, the question was, can you provide examples from your classroom or your educational experiences that illustrate that connection? So I was thinking listening and speaking. I do read alouds every day, multiple times a day. And there's moments where I pause, I ask questions where I look like I'm actually asking the question, but really I'm directing that, next step thinking. Um, and they're listening to me. And then you can do turn and talks there. And then you start noticing they are using similar words that I modeled with. And then if you want to incorporate sentence frames, which we started doing the last couple weeks in our writing, that then helps them in their
You have to go away.
in their writing, which then went to my listening and writing. I do that. After listening to a story, we have been asking our students to write about, a
Mhm.
sentence, a guided sentence frame. So it might be like the snowman. We did this. Well, I didn't do the snowman one today. But ours, I'm loving these.
Yeah.
I was trying to see where I put it to save it for tomorrow.
It's funny because you're off camera, but you're talking. It was really
It's still
funny.
here.
I was like,
Yeah.
hey,
I have a standing desk so I can move.
I love that.
I think that goes like in that article, well, it was talking about giving them, activities that are meaningful to them, like
Yes.
getting them to understand. So when you're doing something like that with the shared writing, you're getting them to understand that, like, when they sit down and they listen to a story or read a book, they're like, it's they're absorbing it, they're learning things, they're talking like different vocabulary words and different sequence of what's happening with the characters, and then also teaching them to like relate it to something in their life. If you got a magical night with a snowman, what would you do with him? So then it gives them some sort of ownership as far as, hey, we just listened to this great book and now I can relate it to my life. Well, if I had spent the night with a magical snowman, this is what I would do. And it's giving them ways to like, it's meaningful as opposed to just like, here, sit down and listen to this story. So, and it, I can definitely see like in my group of students, like they love this point in our day. Like they love to sit down and listen to stories, and like they know like you're building once again that structure for them that, this is what we do at this point in our day, and they know what the expectation is, and they love to like share their writing afterwards. I had a couple girls the other day come up to me that they're writing a chapter book, and like it's adorable.
Yeah.
Like it's just finding the ways to make them love it. Like I love it. Like I love to read books and I love to write, and I'm just, finding ways to share it with them, and then to see them pick it up is fun.
For sure.
I love that activity. That's adorable. In the book, it talks about the information gap, information gap activities. And I was just thinking, this is one thing that I did last year with my students in Read 180. Did y'all have Read 180 last year?
Do we have Read 180?
It would have been last year. No, your kiddos would have been System 44, which is before Read 180. Anyway, it's Read 180 is what iReady took the place of. So okay. It was just an intervention that Cobb County used, was Read 180. But I'd read the story or the text aloud to the students. This is my 4th and 5th graders. And every so often I'd leave a word out in the sentence, and they were expected to say the word when I was at that point. And
Mhm.
that was similar to something that was mentioned in the book about, you leave out a part and then they fill it in for their listening skills.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I thought that's one thing that I've done in the past. And also, and I'm so sorry, but I don't know where this was, but using rubrics, like after an activity, giving them a rubric, how well did you listen? What was challenging for you? What was, on a scale of 1 to 5, how well did you listen? And I've even done that with group projects before. How well did your peers listen to you, or how well did you listen? How well did they speak? But especially with fourth and fifth grade, give them that, it holds them accountable. Like you were saying, Krista, it gives them a purpose. We're not just
Mhm.
doing this.
Yeah.
There's a reason we're working on our listening and our speaking skills.
Mhm.
And I also, oftentimes, I will say something 2 times and that is it. Like if I'm
Oh, yeah.
giving like dictation or something, I'm going to say this sentence 2 times. That's
Mhm.
it. I'm not going to repeat it 15. So if
Nope.
you don't, and I've seen a difference in that from the beginning
Mhm.
of the year. That was harder than it is for my third graders now when I say I'm saying this twice. Listen
Mhm.
to the dictation sentence before you just start writing and then you don't hear what I say.
Mhm.
So maybe that's another thing I incorporate in my classroom.
I know
Mhm.
for like we did Penguin Day recently, and I did an activity where I gave them 4 penguins that were all one was short, one was medium, one was tall. They were all wearing a scarf and a hat, etc. And I would read 2 directions at a time, but I'd only read it once. So it might say color the small penguin pink, but color all of the scarves green. And it was
Oh,
interesting because I only gave 10. So then I was reading, 5 sets, right? And it was very fascinating
I love
how
that.
many would do one and then skip or do part. So, like I said, color all the scarves, but they only colored the one scarf from the first penguin that I asked them to color.
They missed the second part of the directions.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And it's like, wow, it's amazing.
Ah,
Little things like that are, it's hard for them. Today, I gave 1 step directions for the entire day, but they wanted to know the fourth step
Mhm.
or what's the next activity we're going to do. And I'm telling you, today was the worst day I've had all school year. I was just flabbergasted. No one's listening, but they want to do all the fun things because we had a theme day today.
right.
And I think part of that too that I've noticed is they're like 20 steps ahead of where they need to go. Like they're thinking 20 steps ahead of where they need to go. Like I pulled them over and just explained what a taste test was today. And like, what are the steps of a taste test? Well, are we going to have our hot chocolate? Well, I'm still talking to, like, they think
Always.
so far
Right.
ahead.
Mhm.
That's why another, the art hub for kids, when we do like the directed drawings,
Yeah.
Yes.
So good.
I love those just for practicing listening. I do, you do. And I will pause it if it's an area of like if they're drawing something a little more extensive. But I had to have a whole conversation with them. I am not going to pause this video every little stroke they make, because if you are watching, he's drawing, then his partner's drawing, and you have plenty of time if you are listening and following directions to get what they have on your paper. So like if it's something that's a little more extensive, I'll pause it. But that was interesting too, because we would never be able to get through a 6-minute how to draw video if I paused it in between
No.
every time. And it's just a good way to practice like you're listening, following directions.
Yeah, that's a
Mhm.
great way too, also.
But then, back to that question. So we came up with, some great ways to continue developing that listening comprehension. So looking at future instructional strategies for future plans, looking at things that I'd be willing to do, I feel like I do that, modeling what an active listener looks like through a read aloud. We do that every day where you're pausing and asking, you're making predictions, clarifying when you start noticing somebody's confused or helping develop a new vocabulary word that they might need to know. That peer discussions, we talked about that. I love those turn-in talks. I liked how you talked about the triads, Kelly.
Yes.
I thought was a good one. So you're encouraging that verbal process of information, but also getting perspectives from your peers. I thought was really good. And then active listening activities. Like I just said, when it comes to like that little penguin thing that I did, I was thinking even like Simon Says, movement breaks don't need to just be Danny Go, even though I love me some Danny Go.
And you need a break every now and then.
Yeah, but doing those, I think are like I didn't think about that, but I would like to start doing that because they don't listen. Imagine how many kids get out the first
Oh,
round,
definitely.
Mhm.
Boom.
because they wouldn't be able to handle that. So I was thinking, okay, you could even do like a scavenger hunt, you know, or I remember I had a teacher when I was eighth grade, Miss Faulkner. I was scared of her. I walked in one day and she goes, "All right, take a pen and paper out. It's time to take a test." And she said, your paper is going to be for scrap paper if needed. Timer starts now. You may begin. It was a 100-question math test, but I didn't read the directions. The directions said, write your name on your paper, answer question number 5, and then flip your paper over.
Oh, goodness.
So I was a psychopath, frantic. I already had massive anxiety very early on in life. I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, how are all these people finishing? They're like people flipping over their tests, like, oh my gosh, am I missing something? I must be stupid. And it's just like that rise in me. I'm like, it's the same concept. If I told my kids, take out a piece of paper, could I say, write your name in the bottom left-hand corner, draw a circle in the middle, and put crazy hair on it? Would they be able to do that? So I think doing just little teachable moments like that to show them the importance of, listening comprehension. I
Mhm.
do think that is crucial,
Mhm.
or having
I
to keep them back.
Sorry, when I was reading the article listening stations in content area learning,
Mhm.
I love the part about readers theater. Readers theater is something I feel like was important a long time ago. I did more readers theater than I do now.
Yeah.
But my dad, passed away this year. So my coworkers were just kind of, doing my lesson plans for me. And they pulled some readers theaters for my students to do. And the children loved them. So
Mhm.
readers theater is already on my brain, like, gosh, I need to incorporate more of this. And lo and behold, there was like a little extension of a readers theater that I've never thought about doing before, but I definitely see the benefit of it. And I would love to incorporate that in future lessons. So the children, practice their readers theater, all that business. But this is the step I've never done before. Students can do an audio recording of their rehearsal so they can play each one back to refine their readings before they present it to the class. I've never done that step.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's
And I
cool.
think that's a great, we've just had them perform practice, blah, blah, blah. I'll listen to them, but I've never had them record themselves, and they love to record themselves. Now we've got iPads and everything else in the world.
That's a great
And then
idea.
listen to it back. That's a really great step that I would like to incorporate,
Mhm.
um, you know, to make to help with listening and speaking and all the above,
Mhm.
language development.
That'd be cool too if you had a kid, they're playing some game in ASP right here. If you had a student record steps for another student to do,
Mhm.
Oh,
see if
yeah.
they could follow, through. That'd sort of be cute.
Hmm.
I like that idea. Good thinking.
Reader's theater is on my brain lately because my kids loved it. When
We,
can
you
we do
know,
it again?
we used to do that a lot too.
When are you going to be out again so we can do Reader's theater? Oh,
Stay home.
That's funny.
so
Let's see. And how are we doing on time, y'all? Where are we at?
I have to leave like in like 5 minutes.
All right, cool. Well, I have a perfect way to wrap us up, ladies. Um, let me see. When you go to Building Literacy with Multilingual Learners, which is our textbook, it says, we begin with 2 beliefs about language, which we see as human rights, the right to a home language and the right to literacy. And I totally agree with that. Whether you're ELL or not, our home language can help us here. We
mhm.
just got to look more at where our kids are coming from, and then we got to immerse them, as best as we can, and scaffold when we can. And then in our article from Unlocking the Research on English Learners, it says ELLs in an English instructional environment will almost certainly need additional support so that instruction is meaningful and productive. And I agree, all students deserve that, as well. So good work, girls.
Thanks for wrapping us up.
Cool. All right, I'm going to pause us. Where's my mouse?